there, Postal here. So today we're taking out the Ki-61. This is another request video. I'm trying to go through my Discord list here and get through these requests. Been a little while since I've dug through them. This is a plane that, well, to be honest, I thought it was going to be easier. When I first went down this tech line, the Ki Japanese fighter line, I didn't keep this plane. I don't really remember it. So I assumed it was an okay plane, and I just, didn't remember it. If it was a bad plane, I typically remember those. But yeah, it's been a little. It takes some nuance to play this particular plane. Alright, so let's see, what are we up against here? We've got 5 sectors, 2 mining facilities, which is not the best. So let's go ahead and get these air defense. What the? Oh, that was really stupid of me. Incredibly done getting in front of the enemy air defense aircraft. Alright, so you'll notice that my fire went out pretty quickly there. I do have firefighter skill on this plane, on this pilot. I highly recommend that for any Japanese fighter. Recommend it for the Yaks as well. Just as a rule of thumb, those entire lines really need firefighter skill. Can I get rid of this guy? Luckily we got this sector. Luckily I did not die. Wasn't sure which way this guy was going to be turning, so just going straight. The thing with this particular plane's guns is you really need to tap. The 20mm cannons, you would think, would be really quite good. They're centrally located on the hub. And that's always nice. It's actually your weaker machine guns that are out on the wings on this particular plane. We've got a Spitfire we're up against, and a P-51. But yeah, these guns are pretty short range. Because of their short range, it can certainly cause issues. You'll see how quickly they overheat. Let's not crash. Well, I thought I was going to make that. I realized the radio tower was sticking up like that. That's pretty lame. Alright, so they're probably going to get the center. We've at least got our sector. Let's move along. Yep, they did get the center. We got the other airbase, though. Forward airbase.
Bomber squadron detected.
And what's going on with these mining facilities? Gonna head to the center in a second. But let's go ahead and kill stuff that's coming into our sector. Not in a huge rush to get the center. Considering, we're up 2 sectors to 1. Their bombing run just started. I'd rather just kind of kill the planes that are in front of me. There we go. Now I'll move along to the center. Yeah, you can see where this gun spread is here. You'll also notice that I'm going to be, from time to time, when my 20mm cannons start to get close to overheating, or actually do overheat, I've got my controls set up to where I can just fire my secondary weapons. So that would be, my 50 cal machine guns on the wings. And that way you're still getting damage out, but allowing your big, heavier cannons to cool off a little bit. Be kind of distracting. The 50 cal machine guns, their accuracy is different than the 20mm cannons, and so very often I feel like I should be hitting, but it's actually my 50 cal machine guns that should be hitting, not my 20mm cannons. See here, you can see that's where my 20mm cannons were overheating, and I just used my 50 cal machine guns. Alright, so we've got a lot going on here. I'm just trying to stay alive. We're on full health at least. So we've got some flexibility. A lot of this has to do with just simply paying attention to the map. And I know I make it sound simple. To me, it does feel simple. Although there's definitely been times where I've lost track of things going on the map. But when you're in a plane like this, where your survivability depends on your ability to not take hits, you need to be mindful of what's going on the map. So there's a Spitfire on the enemy team. Speaking of which, I need to be paying attention to where he is, what he's doing, because I don't know this guy's skill set. Spitfire and a Ki-61 are pretty comparable as far as their airframes are concerned, and we'll go over that in a little bit more detail once we get back to the hangar. But I always assume that the pilot I'm going against is going to have better WASD skills than I have, until that's proven otherwise. And so I'm also looking on the map for, is there a Yak? Is there a Zero? Those are planes that can definitely outmaneuver me. And as such, you need to be focused on what's going on. You need to be seeing what's going on the map in that regard to see what you have to be prepared to dogfight or avoid. You need to be paying attention to the heavy fighters. Is an ME-410 inbound, then you're going to be in a heck of a lot of trouble. And so paying attention to the map is really important. Okay. Do not need to crash again. We're up on points, but we're down on sectors. Not overly worried about it. We continue to hold on to the center sector here. This is one of those times where hanging on to the center sector is truly a viable tactic. By hanging on to the center, I literally am attacking a sector of theirs. We've got that bombing run attacking the mining facility, which we have more than 75% of. And so defending this sector is actually going to help us win the game. The Spitfire was not paying attention, and unfortunately I just killed him right after squall line. Alright, we're set up for the win at this point. So the thing with this plane is it's actually less maneuverable than the Tier 5, right? You get some decent altitude boost, but you haven't gotten like significant altitude boost like you do once you get to Tier 8. Tier 7's even got pretty good tier altitude. This plane, it's middling for Tier 6. It's good for what the line was previously as far as altitude is concerned, but it's middling for Tier 6. And so that can be the disappointing thing with the Ki-61. To help this plane or make this plane be effective, you need to do everything you can to pay attention to what's going on the map, where you can be most effective. If you continually run into an enemy aircraft that you just keep getting owned by, even if it's a plane that on paper is less maneuverable than you, well, there's better pilots out there than you. There's certainly better pilots out there than me. And you've got to change your tact. You can't just keep attacking the same sector over and over again. In this situation, let's say I couldn't hang on to the center, that this Spitfire that I happened to keep killing, he kept killing me. Well, then I would make sure that we get the air bases to help our ground attackers and bombers attack the center a little bit better. I would help defend our bombers and ground attackers at the mining facilities. I'd find a way to be effective. This particular game was pretty darn good. Got ourselves a Marseille even after dying, which is hilarious. And got the Ace and Akamatsu and all the other jazz. So again, it can be a very good plane, but it's not a plug-and-play game. Let's head back. Alright, so I was working on my mission. I think I only needed 6 more enemy aircraft. Remember, enemy aircraft are not air defense aircraft or bomber run aircraft. But I far exceeded that. So, the Ki-61 though. So I don't want anybody to be like, wow, Ki-61, freaking OP, crazy, ridiculous plane. I've actually been flying this plane for, I want to say 10 days now. Not every day, of course. and not even every day that I fly. But I've done probably half a dozen battles, and it took me that long to really come back to terms to it. So I didn't remember this plane on the original grind. And I'm going to dig into the way I feel this plane needs to be set up, and then we'll go on. So 16,000 personal points, pretty darn good here. Proud of the Ace and the Marseille, because of course you get a Marseille when you're not trying to get a Marseille, because why in the frig not? Let's talk a little bit about the tech tree here, and then we're going to talk about the plane specifically, and then I'm going to toss my suggestions out. So, and I had this particular plane requested by one of my followers on Discord. Actually, I mean, he watches me on Twitch and watches my YouTube videos too, so he definitely, not that anybody deserves quote-unquote requests, but he definitely does deserve some requests to go through. The Ki line, this is the Army line of the Japanese fighters. The A6M line, or the Zero line, is the Navy version. I wasn't really familiar with Kis before I started playing this game. I was much more familiar with Zeros on my, ridiculously poor knowledge of World War II aircraft outside the United States. The Ki-61, when I first went down this line, I did not keep it. I couldn't really remember it. I don't remember it being bad. Don't remember it being good. That's why I didn't keep it. For that matter, though, I didn't keep the Ki-84, and that was just because I'm a moron. Ki-84 is one of the best Tier 7 fighters in the game. Yeah. So, what is the Ki-61? Well, this line is basically seen as a higher altitude turn fighter line. Kind of the best of both worlds, right? You see it very often compared to things like BF-109s. You'll see it compared as far as altitude performance is concerned. You'll see, well, if it's compared to that, well, then it should be being compared to things like the I-210. Those are going to be high altitude aircraft as well, right? Well, but see, the thing of it is that mantra doesn't really kick in at Tier 6. It's not until you get to Tier 7 that it starts to get better. And then Tier 8 is where you get your really good altitude performance. So that mantra of high altitude turn fighter is not relevant for the Ki-61. So let's put that out of our brain right now. You can see right here. Altitude performance, 39 compared to the 50s of the true altitude fighters. Okay, so then it's definitely not an altitude fighter. I mean, it's higher than a frickin' A6M5. Oh, yeah, well, what isn't? But it's nothing like over-the-top crazy. So let's compare it to what I think is a better contemporary. And that's going to be your Spitfire 5. Now, the thing with the Spitfire 5 is I don't even have a regular Spitfire 5. That's just because there's no reason to have a regular Spitfire 5, in my humble opinion. There's so many premium versions of the Spitfire 5 out there that you might as well just have a premium Spitfire 5. Eventually, once you trip over and get them for free in one of the crates. I've gotten this Spitfire 5 for free in a crate. I got this Spitfire 5 for free in a crate. I even got the Spitfire 5 DB605. Excuse me. Which I got this DB605, which is a German version of the Spitfire 5. It was captured by the Germans. They put a German engine in it, this means this plane has the altitude of a BF-109, but all the other characteristics of a Spitfire 5. If you don't care about the nation, then right here is the best Tier 6 Spitfire in the game. Bar none. You can't even argue that. I dare you. I don't dare you, because you can't. Anyway, so we're just going to take a look here at the Spitfire 5. I'm going to show a picture of the, the VB. Whoopity-doo. But for all intents and purposes, let's actually just use this one's aircraft experience here. We're just going to compare these two. So the Spitfire 5 has the two 20mm cannons. You've got two 20mm cannons. The difference is the Spitfire 5 has 4 of these machine guns, while you only have 2 machine guns on the Ki-61. Not a huge difference, to be honest. The fact of the matter is they're all on the wings on the Spitfire, and your 20mm cannons are centrally located on the Ki-61. Well, that sounds pretty good. Another big difference, though, is the range. You have about 100 meters, 330 feet shorter difference, right? Am I calculating this right? We'll say it's about that. 250 feet or so range on the cannons that the Spitfire has over the Ki-61. That does make a difference, so you want to keep that in mind. Otherwise, they compare pretty closely. Altitude performance, pretty close. Maneuverability, pretty close. Airspeed, pretty close. The other big difference is going to be if you're in a Ki-61. That means you catch on fire, your wings get knocked out. Like, it's just a more fragile aircraft. And last but not least, Spitfires tend to just be more prevalent in the game, which means the people flying Spitfires tend to have them already specialized, which means they've probably got a pilot that's going to be higher than your 5-point pilot or your 7-point pilot. They're probably going to have a 9, 10, 11, 12-point pilot on their plane. And from that point, you can kind of go in, if you see a specialized Spitfire 5, you can expect it to have pretty good metrics just because of the plane type it is and the fact that it's a more popular plane. So keep that in mind when you're up against the Spitfire 5. You're probably going to get outdone, especially if you're in a still stock or non-specialized Ki-61. But that being said, it compares pretty favorably to a Spitfire 5. And so why don't you see this plane more often? Well, I think part of it is because the hit registry on the cannons seems to be a little bit off. I think part of that has to do with the range of the cannons. These guns also overheat pretty quickly as well. And so you'll notice in this battle I did a lot of tapping. In fact, I have on my setup the ability to just fire my secondary machine guns. Basically shooting those to be getting a little bit of damage while I'm letting my main cannons cool off. And then I go back to firing all my guns at one time. And hopefully I pointed that out in the battle. That's really important for planes like this. It's a skill set that I would highly encourage that anybody that flies planes that their main cannons overheat, but you still have secondary machine guns or cannons that you can continue to fire. It's a skill set that I would highly recommend learning sooner rather than later. And I think that's part of it, is the cannons. The other part of it, I truly believe, is people think this is a high altitude plane, and really its bread and butter is in the definitely lower end of maneuverability. Lower end of altitude performance. Problem is you run into a lot of zeros down at that altitude. You're going to run into a lot of Spitfires. You're going to run into a lot of those planes, even Yaks, that are going to be able to outmaneuver you. And what do you do in those situations? Well, you need to use your airspeed, except against Spitfires because you don't have airspeed over them. You're equal. Use your airspeed. You need to be paying attention to the map, and you need to be getting ready to go. If you've got a brand new pilot in this plane, then you're going to want to have, on your consumables, you're going to want to have a fire extinguisher. Once you've gotten your first pilot point on this plane, put it towards fire extinguisher, or firefighter, skill point, and change your consumable to first aid package. The reason being is that way if your pilot's knocked out, you can put him back in. Hey, what a concept. But your pilot's also going to be what puts your fire out, as long as you're actively maneuvering. In the very beginning, I was not actively maneuvering, and so when I was set on fire, I just continued staying in a straight line, and of course, I'm going to stay on fire. You're in a turn fighter anyway, you should just start actively maneuvering. I played poorly there, don't do what I did, but that's the setup I recommend. Get firefighter skill point, put yourself to first aid dressing, and move along. Next, I'm only on 3 points on this pilot. I've gone for Marksman 1. My next option is, once I get my next 2 points, we'll see what I do. It's kind of a toss-up on the next 2 points, whether I go for aerobatics expert, which would be better if it's not a specialized plane. Once you specialize this plane, aerodynamics expert is going to be the better way to go. And the reason being is because once you specialize it, you're going to have 2 more equipment slots. that you can fully maximize maneuverability and things of that nature. I don't want to, on my next item for airframe, I don't want to use reinforced airframe because that's going to mess up my maneuverability, and I don't want to use polished skin because of the same reason. So the next thing I'm actually going to do is reinforced skin. Yeah, it slows me down a little bit, but I'm not overly fast anyway. And it'll help my my wings and tail, combine the word there. And again, it won't mess up my maneuverability. Then I can go for the engine. I can go with any option. I'm probably going to go with lightweight power unit, just again to help my maneuverability in those situations. My focus on this particular plane, like a lot of my turn fighters, is just to avoid being hit in the first place. And so maneuverability helps out in that kind of situation. However, you could very easily on the engine go with upgraded engine. Any of those things that help the airspeed certainly wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily in this regard. I could also conceivably still go with polished skin here to help the airspeed. Yeah, it'll mess up the maneuverability, but you can find a balance sometimes to that, especially if your skill point that you've got on your pilot is going to be the aerodynamics expert. Remember, aerodynamics expert gives a 40% buff to any equipment that helps aircraft maneuverability and speed. So it only increases the positive effect, not the negative effect. So you'd increase the polished skin impact on the speed, but not the negative impact to its maneuverability. That wouldn't be increased. So conceivably, if you did polished skin plus lightweight power unit here, you could really balance out the negative maneuverability from the polished skin because you've got aerodynamics expert as your next, your fifth point basically on your pilot. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, reach out to me in the comments below. Reach out to me in my Discord. I always recommend reaching out in Discord because it's just, I'll respond very quickly in Discord. I've got access to it on my phone at all times or while I'm on the computer. As far as consumables are concerned, once I specialize this plane, the engine doesn't get knocked out all that much. So I would actually put on here the engine cooling just to get that 10 seconds of boost. It would be really, really helpful when you do need the boost in the Ki-61. Otherwise, here it's kind of a toss-up. If you continually get set on fire, I would say you probably need to find a way to not get shot in the first place. Pay as much attention to the map as you can. Start actively maneuvering ahead of time so that it makes it more difficult to be shot in the first place. If you're still having struggles, though, then the bleed system is not a bad idea. That helps reduce the chance of fire by 20%. Emergency control system you almost certainly want. If you don't get reinforced skin once you specialize, and you go with the polished skin, then you definitely want to get the emergency control system just to put your wings and tail back in. But again, if you're getting set on fire all the time and your firefighter skills not helping as much as you want it to, then go with the bleed system. That certainly can't hurt. So anyway, this is the Ki-61. A plane I thought, the first time I went down this line was a long time ago. So I thought when I bought this plane back that it would be like one of those planes I just kind of hop into and be like, oh yeah, this is a lot better than I remember it, mainly because I'm a lot better pilot than I was 2 years ago. I tend to like fighters. I love turn fighters. I just enjoy that gameplay. I do well at that gameplay, which might be one of the reasons why I enjoy it. Or vice versa. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg in that situation. But I actually did struggle quite a bit. Not that I was, how do I put this? I wasn't like, not able to do well. I just wasn't able to do as well as I know this plane can do. This battle kind of showed a little bit more of everything this plane can do. If you don't push it past its limits. Don't push yourself past the altitude limits. This plane is not built for that yet. Keep mindful of the turn engagements that you're going against. You're only Spitfire level. You're not Yak 0 level of maneuverability. Don't think that you can survive those engagements. So you got to know where your place is. When it comes to a lot of the planes in this game, you need to know what you do well against and what you do poor against. And what you need to do when you're up against those planes that can outmaneuver you. What you need to do when you're going up against those planes that can out-altitude you. and what you need to do when it comes to those planes that are basically a carbon copy of you, aka Spitfires. A lot of it just has to do with situational awareness. Pay attention to your map. If you know that that one of the enemies is going to be able to outmaneuver you, or is going to be on par with the maneuverability of you, it's basically going to come down to who attacks the other person first, or who gets the jump on the other person first. In those types of situations, typically the first person to take advantage of the situation is going to be the one that wins, because you knock out wings, you knock out pilots, you set them on fire, yada yada yada. The advantage is yours. If you're not paying attention to what's going on, then you don't have any advantage. And if your plane is already going to get outmaneuvered, then you're in a hell of a lot of trouble. So I hope this was helpful. Honestly, a lot of these tips are going to be just helpful for fighters in general. Actually, for a lot of planes in general. But these tips were had some specific ones to the Ki-61 as well. So I hope just in general this helped. If you've got any additional questions, if you've got any comments, if you've got any additional suggestions, put them in the comments below. Hop in my Discord as well. We're happy to have you. And otherwise, I hope you all have a great day. Bye.